Did I give you the history I wrote of your mother?
Yes.
Oh, you have it.
Good, because I've been looking for mine to copy for you.
See where I can find mine.
Yeah, I wonder what happened. That's all I got. Maybe all I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a snatch.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder why I hadn't realized that you were a Benyon man.
Well, we haven't seen each other to talk.
Maybe. But I've heard about you, and I talked to Laura about you.
Lynn married her second cousin.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, that's what Lenora and Owen did.
If
Yeah.
Lenore and Owen made it work, that we just blame it on them.
Okay. Well, now let me see. There's. Do you know the Engelbrettsons up in our area? Okay. I gave a talk at the at the state women's meeting and quoted Lowell Benyon. And afterward, and I can't remember her first name, but her husband was bishop in one of the Philadelphia wards now, came up and said, in fact, what I was quoting was that one of his sisters had come to him about advice about should she marry this man who was really pushing her to get married, and he was just very angry and said, absolutely not that guy. And she came up to me and said, my grandmother was Lowell Benyon's sister. And it was now what was the oldest sister?
Lowell's?
Yeah.
Who's Lowell's? Oh, Claire?
Claire.
Well, you mean Lowell?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was.
It was Claire.
No, it wasn't Maureen, because Maureen's the mother of Barbara.
Yeah.
Well, Claire is the first one.
Mm-hmm. I think it was Claire's daughter, or granddaughter. And it was, if I hadn't told my story, I'd never have learned that this lady I was seeing in the chapel all the time was...
Well, Dorothy told you her story about Wayne's daughter,
Yes, Lark.
I think
yeah.
that's so cute. I think that those
I know
ought to be
that.
written up and put in the
I know that, Mary
Benyon letter. Have
Turpin.
you been getting the Benyon letter?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would be a cute thing to have in that Benyon
Our
letter.
son John had the same experience with on my father's side of the family in their ward in...
You want more ice cream?
Well, no, that'll do. Well, this is mine. I guess I'll give.
Excuse me, I should have just given it to her.
No,
I
no.
mean, not Dorothy. We're all getting old, aren't we?
A young wife was up telling about Aunt Jody, and he says, hey, that rings a bell, and found out they were cousins. Her husband was there in medical school.
Well, that's interesting. Well, we're all over, and the early study president I worked with, she said, well, she's a convert from Virginia. And she said, I've learned when you go to Salt Lake, you never talk about anyone. Because
It's
certainly
always
they're related.
somebody's.
They know somebody. There's somebody close.
Well, in the law office that I was in a long time, two secretaries that we hired were my cousins that I'd never met.
Oh, yes.
They weren't very close, but they were. Well, one was being women, they'd taken their husband's name, of course, and so that didn't help.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say the Cannon family is the largest family in the church.
Is that right?
They have more descendants now than any other single family.
Well, I thought maybe some Smith family would be, but I guess starting with
Well, you can't count the reorganized, and that's a lot of the Smiths are maybe over there, I'm not sure. No, I don't know that they're...
But I figured if it was the right person, you'd answer that.
well, you don't remember our house in Forest Hill.
Oh, I remember it very well.
Well,
And I remember Uncle Milt's house next door because we both, after we were married, we went over and visited with Uncle Milt.
well, your mother was living at our place when you were born. So you were the baby around the house for quite a while.
We brought a video. I don't know if we'll have time to show it to you, but we were in New Zealand
You were?
just a year ago. Just this Easter vacation last year, we took off and see. We have two sons that are pilots. One flies for American and one for Delta.
So you got tickets to any place?
And we went to the a far place. 22 hours in the airplane.
My brother's the mission president.
I saw it in the church news and got real excited because it was just after we'd come back and we had fallen in love with it, and to see his picture, and I have never met his wife, but there they both were, and going to stay there. He can mention that. Oh, in addition to the mission.
Right after he was married to her, they
Mhm.
took off and went down, and he taught at the church college and was there when the temple was built.
Very nice. Well, you see, she'd been there, and I didn't know that. They'd only mentioned that he had been there on a mission.
And they just, I think they didn't dare hope that they were going to get that mission.
Mm-hmm.
He, in fact, he's gone back 2 or 3 times
Mm-hmm.
in the last 10 years and wanted to buy a summer home in New Zealand, which we laughed about.
I can understand why. Well, is it summer here or summer there? What did he
Well,
mean?
It's summer there when it's winter here, so
Mhm.
that's lovely for them. But I said, your kids will never be able to afford to go use their family home. But anyway, he may still do it.
Give us the address.
You're the one that can use it with your tickets.
We rented a minivan and slept and cooked in it and traveled for over a week all the way down to the southern tip. And
I just saw something that came out in the Washington Post about traveling to New Zealand and picked it out, because apparently a lot of people travel that way.
mhm. It was so gorgeous.
Well, he was dating Alda, his wife, but they hadn't been engaged when he was called on a mission to go down there and teach.
Oh, is that true?
Well,
It's
this,
called a mission for us, they just got-
this call kind of, they had to decide whether they were going to get married or not. So they said, that precipitated the wedding. And she lived in Kaysville, I guess. I don't know how many invitations they sent out, but everybody in Kaysville came to the wedding. Invited or not.
I know that, but we've had that. They sent us the phone book. We wanted the list of people to invite. The groom lived in Preston, Idaho. They sent us the phone book. You had to go out and buy some more, have more invitations printed.
We were very gracious.
We omitted the gas stations and a few things, but
It's too bad you don't know Alda. She's
You'll have to go back to New Zealand.
I'm tempted to, but I know they're so busy. They couldn't see people.
Well,
They do very well.
in the bunch of letters that I got yesterday, they have several that went to our home that they written. In fact, there's 4 letters that you haven't read. I've only read 2 of them, but I'll just give them a rundown of what they've been doing. But they're expected to feed everybody that comes in or goes out. And so they're always having dinner. But she mentioned some woman that she's hired to help her.
Oh, true.
So she does get some help.
Well, I hope. She'd have to do that. We went by the mission home, didn't we?
Yes. This is the mission office. It's the same place.
But it was a holiday. It was Good Friday. And nobody was around. It was closed up.
I don't know if they live nearby or. That's Marcia. How about you?
I'd like it, but I'm not gonna have it. Thank you.
It's really good.
I'd make a little-
Beautiful. I haven't made a cake in a long time. I'm impressed.
I will get for company and it's out of the box. I prefer pie to little cakes much easier. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of a cake did you make of your trip then?
We made a tape of our trip, and then at the airport, as we were leaving, I bought one. And between the two of us, it was nice. But it is amazingly beautiful. Beautiful. Clear air. Nowhere was there anything but clear
Did you
air.
go to the South Island too?
We sure did, to the southern tip of it, down to the fjords. Took the boat out in the fjords.
How did you get your boat, your car on a boat, on
Mhm.
the ferry?
Very close.
Mm-hmm.
Big ferry from North Island, South Island, back again. That was a big question mark, but we did it.
That's nice.
We drove all night to get there, to go back again, so it would be first in line, because we didn't have a reservation.
On the boat, on the ferry. Mhm.
Slept in the car and things.
We sure did.
It made a bed, and the roof lifted up, and then it made a nice
It popped
bed.
off. It was very nice. It was comfortable, and we could go anywhere we wanted.
Take your time and stay with them.
Well, we couldn't take a lot of time. I didn't see one museum. We only had 8 days, and we wanted to cover so much distance.
We saw a lot of sheep,
And more
a
sheep,
lot of deer.
and more sheep.
I had never thought they'd have a deer farm, but they. when
A lot of deer
You buy
farms.
things made out of doe skin, those aren't wild doe, they raise them.
Different kinds of
Big
deer.
fields,
Elk.
fenced fields full of doe.
Must be a high fence.
Yeah, because they're jumpers. That's right.
You know, my sister and her husband, Catherine and Lynn, went to New Zealand to meet some friends of theirs who were coming from Australia, who were from Salt Lake. Because they wanted to do some climbing in the mountains in the South Island.
Mhm.
And the trip they wanted to go on was full, a nice tourist trip.
Mm.
And so they ended up going on this very rigorous climb. This is almost fair. But the letter that she wrote, and I heard about it, was just really interesting, very funny. But there were only the two climbers, mountain climbers, and then the two couples, 4 people, and then one sheep herder who had said he had herded sheep there all of his life, and he wanted very much to climb the mountain. He'd been looking at this mountain for so long. She said he was far better conditioned than any of the 4, and that the 2 leaders of the group were just kind of a separate personalities and a separate breed apart. They kind of went and did their own thing. Well, coming down the mountain was so hard on their legs, and they got so sore. And the first place they stayed at the night that they came down, she said none of them could go up and down the stairs. They had to do it backwards. Or sitting down. Anyway, it was really cute.
We have a boy that runs in the Boston Marathon, and he says that it's harder to run down the hill than it is up.
Right out again.
Come out and watch it this time, because he didn't enter any qualifying meets, so he's gonna watch
He
it this
ran-
year and come back next year.
He ran in it last year, but he hadn't entered early enough to be official. So his time last year was enough to qualify him to run this year. But it wasn't an official time because he wasn't an official runner. And he had run, that was in April, and he had run in November before that at another one, which qualified him for that one. So this year he is not officially qualified, and he's not sure. He's written them a very sad letter about the whole thing to see if they won't make an exception. He's not optimistic. He says he'll be there watching.
Well, it's a rigorous experience.
Oh,
Captain Leonard both ran the marathon down in St. George.
John used to go down to that one, our son John, when he was in school.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, they do well to finish if they don't have to win it to do well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Horrible
Well,
experience. I can't. Self-torture.
another thing, when I went to law school for 3 years, and your mother got married while I was away. In fact, Eleanor, John, and Milton all got married while I was away. So when I came home, I was the old man
Yeah.
of the place. But,
The most eligible bachelor.
well, yeah, I should have been married by that time, but I didn't. So I was just waiting around until I was 34. Which is, my wife thinks it's hard to teach a man something new when he's 34. Well, it's very nice to be here and meet you here. I remember you came to our place sometime you were out of Salt Lake, and we didn't get enough
Mother
time
was.
to talk.
We had marvelous dinner. Oh, I fix those beautiful dinners, and it's embarrassing.
Well, I've always
So nice.
been sensitive writing your mother's history, and I couldn't do that without including Wallace Bennett. And I didn't know whether that would sit well with you or not, but she was,
Dorothy objects to it. She says that her grandfather was a fine person, and she doesn't need to hear all this about Wallace Bennett.
who is this?
Dorothy.
Oh,
My daughter,
oh,
yeah.
I see. Well, is she married into the Bennett family?
No, no.
Oh, I see.
Sacristan.
Well, Wallace Bennett's okay. I shake hands with him on the street every once in a while now.
Still?
Oh, yeah. Well, he couldn't very well say, I don't know you. When he,
Well, he's got to be 90. He'd have to be 90.
yeah. When he came to our house for about 7 years, from the time that Lenore started high school, and he was editor of the Golden Blue, which is a monthly magazine of the LDS, and she was an assistant. And when they both went to the university, why, they were both on the staff of the Penn, which is the literary magazine of the University of Utah. And then, when they graduated from college, she went to Rexburg, Idaho to teach, and he went to Manassas, Colorado. Well, that was too bad that they separated. She got acquainted with some Idaho boys, and I'm often wondered what really changed her, because
Well, one was named Marion Romney. He was a student up there, and in her English class, and he sat in the front row, and she'd be teaching away, and his foot would get on her toe. He was older. He'd come back from his mission.
well, yeah, he's in the presidency of the church now.
Was.
It's the same Marion Romney.
Yeah, right. And he married another teacher there, a good friend of mine.
Yeah, his wife's a teacher of Rexburg, and well, it was Marion's father that was the principal of
Principal
that
there.
high school. Well, little things change our lives, like me going to New York to live with the Howells, and I'm putting this in my history, which I hope to get finished sometime, but I had become very interested in radio. I'd worked for Baldwin Radio, but my Aunt Annie was the godmother to all of the Cannons. She had never married. Said, well, Paul, there's 11 in your family, there ought to be one lawyer. So why don't you go to law school? Well, Columbia required 3 years of pre-legal. So I knew they wouldn't take me, and I went down to apply with that in mind. Well, they took me,
Yeah.
and so I never found a way to turn around. And I've always thought Columbia was a good school, but it doesn't really matter which school you go to. It's what you do after you get out of school. Well, when I got back, Lenore was married, and you came along, and then Joe was born in
Yeah.
Salt Lake.
Yeah. Oh, we're still there.
Now I remember Joe walked around kind of stooped. And I offered running why, because I don't think there was any need for it, because it didn't last. Well, so the last time we counted, John M. Cannon had 400 or 500 descendants. So, and you're among them, so.
Yeah, we-
Have you put in your history that when you were at school, that they were waiting for you to get something from home for Christmas?
Oh, well, I don't recall whether I put that in or not, but I'm sure I will if I didn't. Though I finished down to when I got through the law school. Well, for 6 months that I was back there, from February 1924 to till Christmas of 22 and 23, I was boarding or staying with Guy Rose and his wife. And they had rented a great big apartment, and they were living on the rents of this apartment. Well, Christmas came while I was there, and a fine homemade box of candy came that your mother had made. And the Rose family had been hiding everything that comes in the mail for Christmas. They said, well, Paul, we're certainly worried about you. Nothing came for you until Christmas Eve. And it was this box of candy that your mother had made. And of course, she was excellent at making candy.
Yes, it is.
Well, that box of candy went around to the whole apartment. Everybody enjoyed it. But one of the big differences then and now, here Lynn and can't talk with their children on the phone, I think about
Every week.
every week.
Yeah.
And I never talked on the phone the 3 years that I was there. Never came home. But I wrote lots of letters. And
Much to be said for that. Nobody writes letters anymore, I don't.
my mother had kept my letters and gave them to me. And they've disappeared.
Oh.
My wife says I threw them out, but I didn't. And I think she got them mixed up with something. Well, as it turned out, Columbia Law School was very lenient then as to who could get in. But they took care of that by weeding them out. And they told us the first day that they would flunk 1/4 of the class. And they did. Well, I didn't happen to get flunked. And there was 300 in our freshman class. But when it came to the senior year, there was only 142. And then only 102 of those graduated on time. So I kind of had my measure taken at Columbia Law School, but I made it.
I'll say, just because you made it. Well, that's beautiful.
A lot of the fellows take law without any intention of practicing. But when I got back, there was nothing else to do, so that changed my whole life. And now I'm too old to do anything else.
You're thinking of changing careers, maybe. Well, I think you've used it to help so many people.
Well,
I hope there's been some satisfaction for you, because you've certainly been in a position to be kind to a lot of people.
well,
My mom couldn't say enough about that. Mom always talking about the things you were doing and
well,
blessing your word to her mother, to your mother, and she...
my brother Ted practiced law. The only thing about Ted, he was the first out of 11 children, mothers to die.
I was thinking of that this morning.
All 11 of us lived for quite a long time. Well, we're down to 3 now.
There's Sterling and Mary.
Just starting to marry, that's all.
Uh-huh. Huh.
You're not still shooting that thing, are you?
Well, it's staying here keeping warm.
He avoided my question.
I'm only a lawyer would recognize that fact.
Yeah. Please answer the question. Don't avoid it. Well, I had never had an ambition to try cases. And I don't naturally talk too well, but after about 10 years of working in a law office where there's 5 lawyers and doing all that research, I decided I'd have to try cases. So I took on the next one. Unfortunately, I came out all right. So I tried quite a lot of big cases in my day, but
Well, it's not every attorney that tries cases.
that's right.
Our son-in-law, John Zackerson, does not try
all.
cases. He's environmental law, and they settle everything out of court.
Yeah, well, we had a case we called it the Madsen case. The R.W. Madsen, who had a furniture store, the Standard Furniture Store. His first wife had died. She had left him quite a lot of money. She was an Armstrong. And then he remarried, and his new wife was about the same age as his sons.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he died, when R.W. died, the new wife didn't think she got enough of the estate, so she brought a lawsuit. And
She was going to cut out the kids, huh?
well, he gave her plenty.
Mm-hmm.
I have enough information that when he died, she was worth about $350,000. So he didn't ignore her. He had given her 1/3 of his estate, and the question was whether or not a certain stock in a certain corporation belonged to him, or whether he had given it away to the boys, and that was the question. And that corporation was worth about as much as all of his other assets. But without that, she was worth this $350,000.
That was in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Double and triple.
That case lasted from October 28th to January 3rd. And I happened to be in the office when the Madsen boys brought in all their documents. And I couldn't say, "No, don't give them to me. I'm not going to try your case." Well, Jensen, the trial lawyer, had died, and that made it my case. So I tried that one.
And the lady lost.
Yeah. It was what we call an equity case. And they're not entitled to a jury, but the judge can have one as an advisory. And that's what he did. And the jury took quite a long time to hand in their decision. But it was all for us when we got through. Well, when people ask me, should so-and-so become a lawyer, I say, well, if he wants to bad enough, it's okay. But
You have to really want to do it and enjoy doing it, because it
yeah, I think so.
takes much.
I can't tell if that thing's going or not.
I can't either. There's supposed to be a red light that comes on
There's a little red light right here.
something's on then.
Now, on the viewer, does it say, it says something when you're looking, it either
Well,
says
point it at
stop
yourself.
or go.
Right, yeah, I really need to know what I think.
Now, what have each of your children done?
Well, 7 of them got married. Thinking about
7
high
weddings.
time for Steve.
How old is he?
31. He graduated from business school last summer.
And is he living?
He's working in Des Moines. I haven't.
Now, how many children do you have?
We have 8 children,
No?
4 girls and 4 boys.
Well, you just arrange things right, don't
Oh,
you?
very well planned, very well.
Yeah, that was, this boy we're talking about was the 6th, and he evened up again at 3 girls and 3 boys. The nurse said we should call him Even Stephen. Well, we bought the Stephen part. So he had
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's good.
And we evened it up again at 8.
Well, I had 2 girls and 2 boys and said I was through.
Yeah, Jan did that. Our daughter Jan said that's enough. And then she had 2 more, a girl and a boy, and she says she's so glad.
We enjoyed it
So
so much.
glad.
Of course, the first 2 came in 2.5 years, and then 7 years later, it was, could see how fast they were going to go.
Yeah,
So
right.
he's been great. Keeps us young,
Yeah.
or involved anyway.
Involved, sure. That used to bother me after, when we had to go to the parents' nights for the 8th one.
The biggest, the oldest.
We were so old, and they were, the other parents were so young, you know.
Hard to go back to elementary school.
Yeah, our youngest was married in December. Just this last December. Yeah, that's what we did. That was the traveling we did
It
over
was
the
a fun
Christmas
story.
holiday.
I guess we shouldn't take time to tell it now, but our daughter Jan lives in Orem, and she had, her best friend was her neighbor lady, which was named
Next
Mrs.
door.
Hanson. And they were like family, single family. And, they had this daughter, Christine.
Their oldest daughter was
Was
Christine.
Jan's husband, Jim Hawks from Preston, Idaho, really adored this girl. He used to, every time she had a date, he used to grill the date, you know, to see if
Go
this
out
guy
and
was-
meet him at the curb.
see if this guy was good enough for Christine to date. You know.
That's good.
Well, our son Pete went to school out there, and then after he graduated from BYU, he stayed out there and worked with Word Perfect. And he used to go to Jan's house all the time to visit the family there. And yet he never met the Hanson family, you know. And then, as chance happened, Pete went to a ward dance or some kind of a dance, and Christine was there. And they were somehow sitting at the same table, and when everybody else got up to dance, well, they were left there and they started to talk. And the more they talked, the more interested they got in each other, you know? And so she gave him her telephone number, and he was going to call. Well, it just happened that the next day that Jan was over in the Hansons using their dark room, and she heard Christine talking with her mom about this fellow she had met. And when Jan came out of the dark room where she was working, they asked her, "You're from Pennsylvania. Have you ever heard of a family named Whitfeld?" Jan's mouth went open. She says, "You gotta be kidding. You have to know that my maiden name was Whitfeld." You know Pete? Well, Pete's my brother. I couldn't believe it.
That's really something.
So they,
Yeah, you'd think it was set up by the 2 families there next door to each other. Far from it.
well, Jan was actually trying to hold on to Christine to introduce her to
Stephen.
Stephen. They didn't even think of Pete as being a viable candidate.
I got well acquainted with Jim Hawks.
Yeah.
Well, he was in our office quite a few times in Salt Lake.
He came by just to talk to you, I think. I
Yeah,
presume he
that's
didn't
all
have-
I can remember now. but now his wife was Jan.
Right.
Yeah. Well, all I remember, not all that I remember, but I remember he married a very beautiful wife. Jan certainly is beautiful.
Yeah, she's a handsome girl, tall, 5'10", 5'9".
Well, it's too bad just to be short. I'm glad Lynn and Catherine aren't as short as they might be. Oz only about 5'2", and I've been about 5'7", is all. But as you get old, you shrink. So Oz is only about 5 feet now.
How tall did you think your father was?
About the same as I remember him. Of course, I was still not fully grown when he died. But he was nearly 52, not quite. But in that time, he had done too much. I mean, he wore himself out. Of course, I guess you knew that he was a polygamist. And had 3 wives and 3 ranches besides the law office, which is not good.
I mean, to have so much to be responsible for.
Yeah. Well, he didn't carry much insurance. I remember him telling me once, he said, well, this ranch is my insurance. But it wasn't fully paid for. And but the year that he died, the 1917, the price of wool had gone way, way up. It was wartime.
Yeah.
And the price stayed up for a while, and then by 1920, it had gone way down from about 40 cents a pound to something less than 20. And we were still paying off some debts, and that made it so we had to sell. And I was lucky that David P. Howells was around to buy it. He paid us cash as much as it was worth. And well, I had been working at Baldwin's for a year, 16 months. And he didn't have any children of his own. And he adopted a boy. He was a blood Howells, but his name was Paul. And then he adopted 2 girls. So his children were all adopted. But I never knew how much he was worth, but he'd made several million in the movie business.
Now that's the Howells and Bell and Howells, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he went into the business of setting up a store for movie equipment. But in those days, the movies were silent. And you've seen a silent movie, and it tells you what they're doing. He could translate that to French, Italian, Japanese. So he did a big business in all those countries.
Was Howell?
What?
Was Howell the name in Bell and Howell? Was Dave Howell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Much money.
all I knew in New York, I knew he had a business that was run by somebody he knew that was in the business of selling movie equipment. And if there was a Howell there, it was his. Their name was Howells with an S. His daughter, one of those 2 girls, Barbara, married this Munch, who now is running the ranch. So we have to get along with him. We use the ranch to go riding in. He doesn't like us to take the automobile up Moffett Creek, but it's all right to ride horses up there, which is all I want to do anyway.
John Whitbell.
David wasn't in here.
David's only 13 or 14,
Just turned 14 and got ordained today.
and he's as tall as his dad. We don't know when he's going to quit growing.
Yeah.
You get paper and pencil or anything? You call me, you need to ride home.
Yeah. We'll go on a walk.
No, we never stop, give up on thinking we could build another cabin up there somewhere. I don't know if it's ever going to be more than just talk around the fireside, but
You mean in
Up.
addition to what's there?
uh-huh.
Well,
We were talking with John Cannon about it. He says, I think you could persuade them, one more.
well, after Milt started to build his house, they put in a zone in law that if you want to build a cabin of this kind in the canyon, you have to have 5 acres. Now that's the zoning now, and in effect we have I guess 3. There's Melt's, and there's a family cabin, and then Beth's, that's Ted's.
Jack's.
Oh, Jack's is, so there's 4. And,
And B's doesn't count?
well, it's not on this 20 acres,
Oh, okay.
but B has an interest in the 20 acres just like I do. And they can make a variance, we can talk them into it. We'd thought of building there, but before we decided to fix up the old family cabin first, and that's been a good thing. We wanted the family to get acquainted with each other, and so that's what's happened. But building, of course, you would know is expensive. We put about $8,000 into the cabin. It's funny how it goes. We thought one coat of new paint would do, but it didn't do the job. So that meant we put in 2 coats. And that upstairs wasn't finished off. We finished that off, and it's very a nice little bedroom now. In fact, we have 2 beds up there. And then we had the roof was gone. We had to put the roof on. It's funny how.
One thing after another.
And put in carpeting too.
It needs a new foundation.
Well, yeah, there's something to worry about. We built close to the edge of this, where the river is, and somebody's trying to tell us that it slipped away to where the cabin might go with it. And we haven't decided what to do on that, but I've wanted to get somebody that could be expert on it and see if we put a new foundation under it, it would be all right. We can't, I don't think we can very well move it. We might. But we're going to have to decide on that. And Sterling always enjoys it. He's got this big family, and every year they spend 10 days or 2 weeks with all their kids. And as Marcella says, she just wondered who they all are. And
We have 9, 10, 11, I forget how many.
they have 11 children.
11?
Well, they, with her 11, and John has had 8,
8.
and they all have children. So I guess there can be one more cabin built there. But that's it. That's it, unless we can get them to change the zoning.
Maybe we may see you when we get back. I'm headed to the Steak Center.
Well, they're not going to serve any more food. Why don't we set that down?
You can eat more, Elsa.
Aren't your daffodils beautiful?
Well, we just went and rescued them out of
I have 5-year-olds this year,
Oh,
and they're kids with problems, special ed kids.
well, you must be very good to have those kids.
Well, it's a challenge. You know, when I taught in the regular first grade, there were certain kids that were difficult, and you really wanted to find out what what they needed, and so I kind of went into that area. And they're not running out of kids with problems. In more Philadelphia, they have these, they call them crack babies, the babies that whose mothers were on drugs.
Oh.
And so the children have problems, and I have one like that, a little girl with a very high bracket.
Well, now, how are they different with the mother having drugs?
Well, you know what is interesting is that it doesn't seem to affect their intelligence. The little girl I have is bright. I'm not ready to say she's bright because of the drugs, but obviously the drugs. But she's just wound up. She can't stop moving. She does she's good, very coordinated, and she does cartwheels all around the room. I tell her to now sit down quietly, and that desk in the corner, when you quiet down, you come back. She puts the chair on top of the desk, climbs up, sits on the chair, and starts waggling around, scares you to death with it. But I say, let's get in line, and she's out the door, and you don't know where in the building she is.
This is her first classroom experience.
Well, I think she was in a preschool. They identified her as special ed before she came to our school. She and her 2 sisters are in a foster home, and the foster mothers raised them.
Do you think she was affected by drugs before she was born?
Yes, no question. Alcohol and what else, I don't know, a combination of something.
So she has no nervous system.
No, that's it. That's it. And she's on Ritalin, and she has it at home in the morning, and then the nurse gives it to her again. And she's teachable then. But there are the days that she spits it out at home and her mom doesn't know it, and we have to cope all morning because the nurse won't touch it until it's her time. So but there are days, there are episodes when she is. And there's a certain charm about her, there's this little elf that is just full of it. But she totally disrupts the class. And
How big is your class?
it's small. I have 6 kids.
Well, that's helpful.
Right. One little boy is autistic, and
I didn't know they ever got those in school.
he's mild to moderate autistic. He's a Jewish child in a very affluent family, but sometime late in the pregnancy, the doctor determined that he was at risk. What do they call it? Stress. Anyway, that they did an emergency cesarean. They check all the life.
Medicine.
vital signs right, and he was not good. And he's very bright. He's reading, second grade. This is a 5-year-old. But he wants what he wants, and if he's frustrated, it's rolling on the floor and kicking and getting on. And again, it's the nervous system somehow is really disturbed, and his fine motor control is very poor. You can't read his name when he writes it, but he wants to play games, and he'll write Dolores and Ellen and everything else instead of his name.
It just shows a lot of
Yeah, oh,
learning.
yes. Yeah.
Well, do you have them all day long?
Yes. Yeah.
What a challenge.
Right.
You need to have a house husband. Keep the pieces together for when you come home.
Well, we don't have any kids at home, and he manages to get around and see see all of them.
That's great.
Takes John and his kids out in the boat, and he's here, and spends time with Dorothy. He stopped on coming back from Utah. He stopped in Salt Lake, and 3 of our kids and their spouses met him at the airport for that layover, and they had lunch, and
Yeah.
so he sees them a lot more than I do.
They converted the car barn in Salt Lake City to a nice shopping center. And in there they put this restaurant, which they call the Spaghetti Factory.
That's where near, just below the Aztec.
Well, of course, I know where that,
Is it Trolley Square?
And
Yeah.
we went there for lunch at the Spaghetti Factory.
Well, Daddy walks down Trolley
that's
Square.
quite close to where we live. And when I used to ride the streetcar, of course, but it did go right by the car barns. And up to 4th South, this car barn thing remind me, we were on the 7th East Line, and the streetcar would go down to about 27th South, which is 2 or 3 blocks farther than ours. And of course that trolley rolls along on the electric cable at the top. And the trolley was on a spring, so that it always pushed that trolley up to the wire. But that wire wasn't always uniformly at a height.
It used to make sparks sometimes.
Well, we kids were never bad, you know. We just went down to where the streetcar was waiting, and it would be touching the trolley wire, but it'd have a rope on it. We'd take that rope and tie it so that if the trolley wire went higher, it wouldn't contact. Well, the streetcar would come up 7th East until it hit a high spot in the wire, and then the power would be off. And of course, they'd have to go out and undo the rope that we'd tied so neatly and let the trolley up to the wire.
Never heard that one.
Well, of course, it wasn't me, it was somebody else.
Who were you with when that happened?
My brother Mick
I was
was
going to say it had to
always
be Mick.
yeah, Mick was much more mischievous than I was. It seems to me every school now has some special class for unusual students. Is that so?
Yeah, they do that much more than they ever have done for the bright ones and the slow ones.
Yeah. In my day, we never had that. I probably would have been put in a slow class.
Oh,
They occasionally get some really bright kids that are misplaced, so.
Well,
I don't think they would with you, but there are kids who aren't talking, and or maybe they have a hearing deficit. Nobody realizes they can't hear, and they get misplaced. Really bright people.
well, I never could read too well, and I still can't spell.
Uh-oh.
Does it run in your family too?
Oh, I thought it was my father's.
Well, yeah.
A lot of bright people can't spell. We have mentally gifted classes, and they laugh about how the gifted kids are bad spellers.
We're gonna make T-shirts in our family. that
Well,
says that.
spelling doesn't have any logic. I mean, all the rules are, you can make all the rules you want, but some of them are broken.
It's visual memory. It's the ability to close your eyes and be able to visualize. And some people don't have that visual memory.
Well, I guess you've stated my case.
Mhm.
My wife can spell
Yeah.
most anything. And I say, how do you do it? She says, well, I see the word.
That's right. A visual picture of it.
And I try to sound the word out.
Mhm.
And of course, there's too many silent letters. So that,
And are there two T's or one? And is it I-E or E-I?
or,
No.
I before E except after C.
And it doesn't always follow
But
that.
yeah, there's too many exceptions to that
All
one.
right.
And,
Oh, he spells.
but I could get 75
Jim
in,
Hawks does.
in spelling and writing.
Mhm.
And that was just passing, so I was lucky I got that good. But I happened to hit a very fine English teacher in the 7th and 8th grade. And she taught grammar. And I've never learned anything about grammar since. But I think I can answer most of the questions.
Grammar. I bet your math is good.
Math was quite easy for me.
Mhm. Math and grammar seem to be in the same locality in the brain.
Oh,
And if one's strong, the other probably is.
well, my father was excellent in math.
I read that and I was surprised. I think of him as being articulate and a verbal kind of a person.
Well, I believe I give the illustration in the history. If you, I forget what I put in one history and whether it's in two histories, but he was very fond of horses and he had this,
Is that picking up the sound?
these two men who came and traveled the country challenging, and they had 3 horses. And the horses would alternate, and the men would alternate. And they were pretty good distance runners, I guess. And my father had a very fast little mare that they came and wanted to use against these 3 men. But the men were running on the inside. And of course that makes the outside is farther than the inside. And my father figured out how much difference it was and made those men give the horses equal distance by moving them up. Well, the 3 horses beat the 2 men for their own time and beat them by very little. But my father very quickly could figure out the distance. And as I remember, it's distance of the circumference is the radius times pi, which is either 3 1/7 if you want. But if you want it close, but pi is 3.1416.
All right.
So that, well, he was not about to let his little mare race somebody and have to go too far.
Was this wasn't, what do they call them? It was just the horse that didn't have the
Well,
trotters.
it wasn't in the cart. It was,
Cart, right.
No, the horses would be ridden. Even so, those men were pretty good. I don't want to race a horse. The point is, if you go far enough, the horse may wear itself out before a man would. So they'd have to know their capabilities. Well, another thing was that was on Sunday. Now, they used to have races there in what was Calder's Park. That's what it was to start with. or Wandermere, but, and they'd have them on Sunday. My father never used to go down. He was in the stake presidency. But this race was on Sunday, but he wasn't about to let those two runners get away with anything, even on Sunday. So, well, my father only had 1 year of college besides his law school.
Oh, is that so?
Mhm. And the law school at Michigan in those days was only 2 years. We have 3 years now. But, well, I wish that my children could have known my father. He was very quick and energetic, and he was rather strict. I'll put it in my history, I guess. Yeah. Sunday I decided to stop at Sunday school. My father almost had meetings elsewhere. Mother wasn't so tough, but my father happened to come home. Here I was in my best clothes, just in the yard. And the thing that surprised me was, instead of getting after me, my father said, well, Paul, the corral needs cleaning out. Let's change our clothes and clean it up. And so that's what we did. And I was very grateful to clean out the corral instead of having my father get after me. And it's the last time I stopped Sunday school, too. Milt and I used to get into quarrels, and I always claimed it was not my fault, it was Milt. Milt liked to tease, and he would tease me until I was mad, and then we'd fight. Then my father would come home and found out we'd been fighting. We both got a lecture. His lectures were worse than being whipped.
Is it, I don't know where I've read it, and maybe you've heard it, but where the story came from, or how I came to know the story of when you got bitten by the dog.
Oh, yeah.
It must be written in your history, but I haven't read any of your history yet.
Well, a family named Smith, who lived just a block east of us, had a dog, and I happened to be up there. The dog would run after you and bark, and I ran to keep away from him, but the dog caught up and caught me by the seat of the pants. And he left, not only tore my pants, but he left a mark on my seat. And I went home, and Father happened to be home, and he could see what the dog had done. But he just picked up his shotgun and went up and shot the dog. No discussion, whatever. And so that was the way my father was. If the thing needed doing, he would do it. But shooting this dog needed doing, I guess. But he might have gotten a lawsuit.
I'll say family pet. Some people feel kind of strong about that.
I kind of had a feeling that the neighbors had respect for your father, though, too.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
It was the day of the gun and the Wild West.
Well, see, my father was born in 1865 in St. George. Angus M., my grandfather, and David H. Cannon were sent down to settle in St. George. Now, David H. stayed there, but my father came back in about 5 or 6 years.
Your grandfather?
Yeah. Now, there's a whole tribe of Cannons in southern Utah from David H. One of the interesting things about him was his first wife told him to take a second wife. She said, David, you're not living your religion. And so he married a second wife, and then the program was to always have three. A man could get along better with three wives than with two. Now, why do you think that's true, or is it?
I hadn't even considered that. I knew the 3 was sort of a magic number, 3 and 5, but I didn't had no idea that there was any logic to it.
There's only 2. He's got to be one or the other. But with 3, you keep him guessing, I suppose. Whatever.
Well, I can remember the stories that Aunt Willie used to get him all dressed up and send him off courting and tell him just what to do, what not to do.
Well,
And she was the sister of Angus's 2 wives. Aunt
Yeah.
Willie was.
yes, George Q married a Mousley girl.
Did she? George Q did? I didn't know that. I knew David did, and Angus married 2
I
of them.
think you're right. No, I think you're right.
Aunt Willie was a sister, a Mosley sister. I must have been quite different because Sarah was so quick and sharp and.
Did you get a copy of the video, the Mousley video from the reunion or hear about it?
No.
Dorothy Sharp has just moved back here and
I
they
have
went out
heard
and
of
took
it.
all those
Heard of
pictures
it.
along the Brandywine. I have it here.
I loved order one. I didn't know I knew that she showed it at the reunion.
Well, Mother sent me one for Christmas, so there must be some place where you can order it.
I have to ask Jan about that.
Because I'd love to go back to the church. It has a picture of the church and the grave.
You knew Dorothy here.
I knew her in Utah, but they're in the South Ward with Meekins, and I see her occasionally.
I guess Don Zackerson was acquainted with her.
She gets around, well, she's been doing kind of the programs that they do at the Visitor Center for investigators. And so that gives her kind of a stake calling where a lot of people get to see her.
I'd like very much to see it. There are a lot of questions about the Mousleys. I don't know if she ever solved any of the mysteries, but it would be fun to see the pictures.
Well, this Warner girl is done a lot just recently
Oh, Marion. Yeah.
to get the history of the Mosley family.
Yeah, Jan and Jim went to that presentation, and Jim helped her load things into the car afterward. Was teasing her because it was I guess he wasn't sure this car could do it. He thought they'd need a Chevrolet. We sell Chevrolets too, she told him.
I had not been aware or forgotten that they went, Daddy's at 3 and Lenore at an older age went to live in Canada. John, their father, took them to Canada for a short time. And Daddy remembers quite a bit for being a 3-year-old of what it was like up there. Have you ever heard your mother talk about being in Canada?
Well, she certainly talked about the Canadian ranch, but I don't remember, it hasn't stuck that she told me much about her being there. And I guess one reason she knew about it was because she was there then.
It must not have been for very long.
You're right, Wilhelm Mina Mosley Cannon married David H. She's the other.
Yeah, she was his first wife, and she was the one that managed his courting. I thought she was something else.
Well, it looks like she's the first wife here, and she must have been the one that told him he had to marry another one.
Right. remember reading that when the Mousley sisters came out, that they came out in covered wagons, but when they got close to Salt Lake, they put on their black silk dresses and rode into town in a Surrey. They weren't going to come in any old wagon.
Well, I've read about them dressing up someplace else. They, Mausers were pretty well to do. And when Angus courted Amanda, he had a hard time having good enough clothes. And tells one story, his knee had broken out, but he always put his hat over his knee. But, when David H. used to come to Salt Lake to a conference, he stayed at our house some of the time anyway, and it was enjoyable to hear him talk. He has this fine language, so that Angus said. I think I've gotten the key to that. They used, when their older brother, George Q, was on the Deseret News, Angus and David both used to proofread for the Deseret News. And this, of course, would give them a lot of insight into good language. The thing on that I talk about too much is that Maureen Whipple wrote a history of St. George. And she has the people that settled St. George as if they were ignorant and didn't have good language. Well,
Charles Dickens did that. He interviewed George Q when he was on the ship there, and he made him sound like he was a cowboy or something. Maybe he faked that. Maybe he put that on for him. But you know that this man who was a teenager before he left England
Wasn't, yeah.
right, wasn't this Western twang.
well, of course, George Q became editor of the Deseret News, and he's outstanding in all these things. He edited the Western Standard, the newspaper put out in San Francisco. Well, of course, I knew Grandpa Kenlon, and everything was formal. He used to go out for a walk, but he'd always put on his Prince Albert coat and his tall hat, or stovepipe hat. And then he was up on the Weber the year we built the big summer home. And I used to help him put on his shirt. He had a dark shirt that was only buttoned about to here. You have to unbutton that to put it on. But when he was coming to Salt Lake, he wanted his white shirt, and Mother had to make potato starch to starch his white shirt. And that's in this history too, not about Mother learned to do it, but that he knew how to do it. And so he wouldn't go out without his white shirt and being starched and Prince Albert coat. And it mentions here that he always kissed his grandchildren. Well, I remember that. He used to stop and he knew who we were in Forest Dale there, and he'd be out walking and he'd stoop and kiss us, which I think was kind of an embarrassment almost. But that's the way he greeted us. Well, according to the history here, his first wife, my grandmother, died about 1913, He died in 1915, the year after he'd been on the Weaver. My father died in 1917.
Oh, so Angus M. died first.
What's that?
I had wondered if Angus M. outlived his son, but no, you're saying he died 2 or 3 years before John M.
Well, yeah, about 2 years before.
Mhm.
He was on the Weaver in 1914 when we were building the big cabin, and then he died in 15. My father and I died in 1917. And Grandma Cannon, this picture here, died about 1913, I guess. And then Grandma Benyon died at the same time, same years.
Is that right?
The four of them died within about 5 years of each other.
Gee.
Of course, Grandma Benyon lived in our house. We started before I was born, and she lived there until she died. She had a room of her own in our big house on 7th East.
I remember her room. It had kind of an alcove.
Well,
Where
that
the
would
bed was.
have been Mother's room.
Oh, is that right?
It had the alcove, and she was the next room east. They both had a fireplace. And well, so Grandma Benyon and Effie Cooper were all a member of our family until they died anyway. Well,
Mother said that her memory of Angus M. was when he was on horseback. She says he kept a fine riding horse, and he always sat very, very straight, very stiff
Yeah.
in the
Well,
horse.
she, Lenore being 5 or 6 years older than I, would have seen him more often than I did. His picture's in here on the horse.
Yeah.
Do you have this book?
Yes, I
Or do you? Well,
Was Effie one of John M.'s?
no, she was a cousin of my grandmother. She was a Cooper. Her last maiden name was Cooper, but she was a Benyon.
well, my grandmother, Benyon, Effie's grandmother or father would have been a brother or sister to Grandma Benyon. And so she was a Turpin. Mary Turpin was my grandmother, Benyon. She married John Benyon. And then her sister married a Cooper. And so Effie was
A niece of Mary Turpin.
yeah, that's right. And
So that made her a cousin of your mother.
well, Effie had a bad back and had to wear a cast for a long time, but this Dr. Terrell that we had for V had her take that off and treated her back and did very well. But Effie had a suitor, goodness, what's his name? Russell, Frank Russell.
Frank Russell.
And she wouldn't, he had a hair lip.
And a mustache.
Yeah, he had a
And he played the
mustache.
piano.
Well, yeah, the piano I have,
A
he
grand
bought.
piano.
This,
No, it's
where is it?
in Salt Lake.
It's in Salt Lake, yeah.
I'm glad you think of this as your home, Daddy.
We're a couple of thousand miles from that piano. But, yes, Frank, after he married Effie, they bought this grand piano. It's a ballroom. And it used to be in our front room, and Frank would play it by the hour. He hoped one time to be an organist for the church in the tabernacle. But he tried out, but he didn't make it. But he seemed to be able to make up music and played a great deal. And Frank died before Effie did. Effie outlived him. And then before she died, she gave me the piano. I found a slip in the piano bench which indicated he'd paid for it by the month. Something like $75 or $100 a month. But it's a swell piano.
Fine instrument. I, some years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I had a dream that I was sitting on the piano bench next to you and you were playing.
Oh,
And I couldn't figure out why I should have dreamed this, except that I was very young in the dream, and that doesn't often happen. And I wondered afterward, why am I remembering this?
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember you sitting by me. But I remember you very well. Both you and Joe.
Mother always loved your playing. She loved to hear you play.
Well, she was very nice about it. I didn't.
She was sincere.
Well, now you lived in the same house until you were how old?
3, but Mother went back to Utah to have the other children, for Lenore, and then Art, and
So you went to
So I-
California
yeah.
after.
we went to California after
Did
Joe
she
was
bring you
born.
with her when she went home?
All
to
of
have
us
babies?
went, yes. Yeah, I turned 6 in September and started school in Salt Lake, and then left soon afterward to go back to California, where I went to first grade. And I had no kindergarten. I remember I was really a lost child. I hadn't even spent much time with other children. And that's an experience of school there was different.
Well,
But Paul was there, and Paul had a big radio in his room, and I used to go in and listen to the music and peep inside. I think there was a phonograph picture on it.
well, Baldwin finally made a complete receiving set. He became famous just for the earphones. But the Navy used Baldwin earphones all through the First World War. And I took enough electricity and magnetism by correspondence to the university to know why I was a better receiving set. And what he did, he would bend the magnet. Of course, every earphone has a magnet in it. And it's in the earphone that the electrical current is changed into a sound by use of a diaphragm. But Baldwin had made that circular magnet, and then with what we call 2 fold pieces and a spool would have 4 points of magnetic contact instead of 2, which made it much more sensitive. And that's, I wrote that up for Dave Evans, who was writing.
I was just going to say, you sound like Dave Evans.
Dave,
Even young Dave.
well, young Dave has gone far beyond anything I don't know anything about, but that's why it was a more sensitive instrument. And people at first would take one of those units off a headset and put it in the base of a horn and have a loudspeaker. And the Baldwin unit had plenty of room for that thing to vibrate, which most of them didn't have. And of course it would vibrate much more with a loudspeaker. Well, anyway, I got very interested in electricity, and I didn't want to go to law school, and went anyway. And stuck it out and passed. Didn't get kicked out, which might have been a good thing.
Well, that was years and years to go, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't just the 3 years.
Well, law school was 3 years. I registered in the start of the fall of 1923, graduated in June of 26, and I lived in New York all the time. The Baldwin receiver, the Baldwin had a sales office in New York, and I got them to open up a repair shop in their office in New York. They did that in the about Christmas time, 1924. So from there to the June of 26, I used to go down and repair those headsets. And that paid my way during that time, so that I had enough for tuition. And in the February of 25, I went in with a couple of other Utah fellows, and we had a hot plate to cook on, and we cooked our own meals. I think I learned how to make pretty good rice pudding. I can't make it now. I've been threatening to make some for years and never have. But I used to buy a pot roast. We had just a plate. And they had a very good butcher shop near us. And I could cook a pot roast on a plate, put a lid on it, and give it a couple of 3 or 4 hours to cook. And it's cooked just right. So that's one thing I did to get through law school.
I had no idea that you were into the electronics like that. I don't know why. I guess I just thought you were the affluent one in the house and had a beautiful radio. I had no idea that this was a special skill of yours.
Well, I knew why the Baldwin receiver or loudspeaker was better. He had he made it with these 4 points of magnetic contact, and the wire on the spool. Now the electrical sound would pick up out of the air, you see, and that's very faint. But it goes into the headset, and it has a spool around with wire, and that spool has a wire of about 1/4 of a mile long. So a very faint bit of electrical energy could be picked up and magnified. Well, the armature was inside that spool, and it would vibrate like the electrical sound. And then that was attached to a diaphragm, so that the diaphragm would vibrate, and that made the sound. Of course, that's the way every telephone works. You get the message in a wire, electrical energy, and then the headset that the receiver that you pick up changes that into an electrical impulse to a sound. And actually, that electrical impulse picked up an ascending thing that you speak into. It's interesting that when it comes out, even the voice is different. When I say a voice, you know somebody's voice on the phone. That's because the electrical energy created in the speaker picks up the sound of your voice just 100%. And so when it comes out the other way, you not only get all the words, but you get the peculiarity of everybody's voice. Well, this is the field I wanted to go into. But I had the misfortune of graduating law school.
Yeah, right. Everybody else is good fortune.
No. Well,
And the technicians could work for you.
well, Baldwin not only invented this set, but he was very sympathetic to the polygamists. And I suppose that's why he was kicked out of the BYU. He taught at the BYU when they let him out. And, but he went into this manufacturing, which is funny. But we had several polygamists working at the Baldwin factory. But he decided that they could work there.
What was he teaching at the Y?
I don't know.
Electronics or-
What's it?
I was wondering if it was electronics or religion.
Well, I'm sure he must have been teaching electronics.
And of course, they usually have to teach the word religion.
We come under the heading of physics. As it was at LDS. Well, Ernest Woolley, who is kind of a crook, got a hold of Baldwin's plant. He made a lot of money out of it. But they did go into making the whole set, not just the loudspeaker. Well, one of the things is, I think obviously computers are all run by electricity. It's the, I could have gotten into the computer field if I'd received with electricity.
Well, even Dave's retired from that now, isn't he?
So he quit going to work.
Well,
I
that's what Mark said, that he was really retired. I heard someone.
You knew he was sick.
No,
He has Alzheimer's.
Dave does.
David C.
Joyce's husband.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they suspected it. I don't know the times exactly, but when I was out there in August, they had taken him back to one of the hospitals for testing. And he was at that time still going into work occasionally. He was really no longer doing a lot.
Well, I don't know whether V really qualified with that or not. It was kind of similar.
Yeah, I didn't quite know if he did. I mean, I don't know if they had her tested, and I don't know how they test for that, but that's what they've
Well,
decided.
she was, she had some symptoms of it, but I don't know that they ever really identified it.
you need my sister Beatrice?
Well, what she's saying is that her son David is now,
Yeah, I can know that. I just haven't seen him for a long time. I went with him through his factory.
Yeah, that's been a couple of years.
I
well, his
don't,
father was always alert. I like to blame it on the Evans, you know, I'd like to tie it
That's
on
right, we don't want it in our
the other
family.
family, that's right. We don't need that one in the family.
No matter what we have to say.
well, my sister Beatrice supposedly went through the grade schools with the highest average up to that time, and it ran about 98%. Well, Lenore did about as well, not quite. And John was always a good student. John became editor, I believe, the Golden Globe were on the staff. And Mel did too. And here I managed to get 75. Reading and spelling.
Yeah. Is this a blank?
It's still got the wrapper on it.
No. This is the wrapper.
You want me to go run that, see if it's got anything on it?
It's over here.
Oh, okay.
Well, David C. Went in school and took
You want me to open
courses related to electricity. And then when the Second World War came along, he was drafted.
I remember. And he went to Germany as an infantryman.
Well, because of what he already knew, he went to some college on,
That's before he went to
Yeah.
Germany. Mm-hmm.
and so he had the best education there was to be had
Yeah, he
in
had that.
electricity.
He had that. And then really had all this accomplished learning and everything, and then they shipped him off at the last of the war in the infantry, and he went through the whole Battle of the Bulge over there in Germany.
Yeah, he was under patent. And his job was to get out ahead somewhere and relay information back. And I think 2 out of
Let me open
5,
it. You're rattling it by the mic.
2 out of 5 million he was shot, killed. So Dave was really right in the thick of it.
Yeah, he was. Well, that's interesting. I was sorry to see Joey released.
Yes. I think she's enjoyed that. And we've been.
Well, she did a fine job. I wanted to get a copy of the tape of her conference talk. I thought it was so lovely. It's just been 2 years now, this April.
They lived around the corner from Kent's family, Elmo and Francis in California, in Lafayette, when they were down there, and Kent was growing up.
And Dave he was working down there for Bendix.
Was he?
Bendix, yeah.
So Francis has always, I think, had a lot of respect for Joy. She did so much in the war. Of course, they were both well liked, but Joy was always very busy with every emergency.
Yeah.
Her nursing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that didn't change. She used to come visit my mother and give her a shot.
Is that right?
Yeah, come down from Salt Lake.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Did your mother know very long before she died what she had?
Mm-hmm.
Did she have any surgery?
She had surgery. She had a tumor in the bowel and had surgery for that. And then a couple of years, 2-3 years later, it was in the liver. And she knew that was terminal. So it was just, slow, drawn out things in different places in the world.